Okay, here we go. Today's 10-minute touch point as we continue to talk about how we can actually thrive and grow during this season of uncertainty and confinement as we are all at home. And today I want to talk about a particular issue that may be coming up in your home. If not for you, then maybe for someone else in your life. And that's, what do we do when we are triggered? And what I mean by trigger is not necessarily the very specific and narrow definition of what trigger is if you're suffering from PTSD. So post-traumatic stress disorder is a condition in which a previous trauma continues to affect your present. And when we talk about triggered in that way, it means that you're actually having a flashback to a traumatic moment that you've been in before. And that's a trigger. That's a little bit beyond our ability to talk about right here. But in the very same way that works within our mind, we can be triggered in all kinds of ways, triggered emotionally for all kinds of reasons. And you may be seeing this in you or in someone you love or in your children as we're spending all of this time together and we're in a sort of pressure cooker of what's happening in our culture and our world. We have an opportunity to grow in the way we respond to strong emotional reactions. So I just want to talk about what you do when you find yourself in an overwhelming emotional reaction. Now, here's the interesting thing. Before any of you tune out to think of yourselves as quite steady and not emotional, you are also having an emotional reaction when you shut down. Like any time that you find yourself either going numb, kind of flatlining, or becoming like really reactive and really responsive, like sort of overly responding to something, you probably have been triggered in some way or another. I love how Crucial Conversations is a great book about how to be in relationship, talk through things. And they talk about the idea that when we're triggered, we respond with silence or violence. And now that's not necessarily physical violence, but I think we all know what it means to be violent with our words or sort of violent with our reaction to something happening. So for some of us, triggers make us go silent and we actually push down and shut down. And for others, when we hit that code red, we're going to respond by like pressing the button. There's those of us who shut it down and those of us who respond. But either way, you're having a reaction, an emotional reaction to an event. So I just wrote down like some of the things that can trigger us both internally and externally. So here's some of the internal triggers that you might experience. A increasing amount of stress, an increasing amount of frustration, sadness, feeling out of control, experiencing physical pain, loneliness, or feelings of abandonment. Now, I'm not trying to check off the list, but I think all of us are probably experiencing several of those right now. And then there's external triggers. We may have a specific sensory experience where we smell something that reminds us of something else, or we see something that reminds us of something else, hear something, etc. We can hear a song. The news can be a specific external trigger. We can be in an overwhelm of bad news. Certain media can also give us certain triggers. Scary movies, too much social media, certain kinds of music can trigger us as well. And another trigger, I find this one really interesting right now, is actually being alone too much can be a trigger. Ever felt like you're trapped in your head? Have you heard someone, or if you experienced where you feel like I can't get out of my head? So being lonely and then being alone too much can also be a trigger that causes us to have a strong emotional reaction. When we have a strong emotional reaction, kind of two things can happen. And even if you've never sort of had a actual panic attack or anxiety, have you ever had that moment where you almost got in a car accident? Most people can relate to this, where you have a moment where you experience future danger and you just have like a surge of adrenaline that goes through you. That's a very similar surge, the fight or flight response that happens in a panic attack or in an anxiety attack. But if you can think of what that feeling feels like when you slam really hard on the brakes, or you swerve around someone, or someone runs a red light and you slam on your brakes, that feeling that you have, do you know what I'm talking about? When you sort of have that wash of reaction over your entire body, that is an adrenal response that actually happens physically. It takes, studies say that it takes 20 to 60 minutes to reset your system after that kind of response. So if you have like a real strong reaction, it can take that long to come back down out of that like arousal state. And that's just important to know, because what you don't want to do in that next 20 to 60 minutes is like make life decisions, have difficult conversations. It's probably a good time to practice some coping techniques that come out of that. But I think a lot of us think that that's our only choice, is like, I'm going to get so triggered that I'm just over the top, or I'm going to be so shut down and withdrawn that I'm completely unavailable to anyone for this whole period of time. When in reality, when you first are triggered, if it's not a full fight or flight response, when you're first triggered, that feeling actually only lasts, ready? 90 seconds. When you are thinking, I'm going to punch someone, I want to say something, I've got to stop this right now, or you feel shutdown mode coming on, and you actually you feel a suppression happening inside of you, if you can get in touch with that feeling, that only lasts 90 seconds. If you can actually stop for that 90 seconds and let that emotion come and go, you can respond more rationally than you can if you respond in the 90 seconds. Now, this is an incredible thing to teach your children, to begin to teach sort of age appropriately through your family, that when you're experiencing, for instance, your kids bickering, or you and your spouse are going at it, sort of understanding, okay, wait, if I want to react right now, if I take 90 seconds, this emotion can actually process through my system. Now, I can choose to stay in that emotion. Like after that 90 seconds, you can re-rehearse and keep yourself in that agitated state for much longer than 90 seconds, but your initial reaction is only 90 seconds. So if you can take a deep breath, take a few deep breaths, and actually become curious about what's happening in you and think about what you're doing in that 90 seconds, there's a couple of tracks that you can take. First of all, if you're a person who really does snap and you tend to lose control of your words, lose control of your temper, or physically lose control, one of the things that you can do in this 90 seconds is it can actually help to touch your arms, like put your body back into your body, because your mind has left your body, come back to your body. And you can take a breath, and this works too if you're really scared, if you're feeling really anxious, and you can say to yourself, I'm okay, I am safe, I am here. I'm okay, I am safe, I am here. That actually can slow down that process and that system so that you can think well about what just happened. The other thing that you can do in this moment is ask yourself, what am I telling myself right now? Like as you want to react and respond really strongly, what are you telling yourself right now? Because what's happening is you're reacting to this stimuli out there and you're telling yourself a story. So let's say you're watching your kid goof off when you think that they need to be doing schoolwork and you're just about to snap at them. Before you snap, like this is not a life or death situation right now. So take 90 seconds and listen to what you're telling yourself. Just take a breath and listen to what you're telling yourself as you're watching your kid. You're like, why is my kid goofing off? Aren't they supposed to be in school right now? Are they not doing the homework that they're supposed to do? What's going to happen if they really stop doing their work? Am I going to have to correct them? If I have to correct, then you listen to what you're doing. And as you listen to it, you're going to realize that you're ramping yourself most likely up and out of the situation that you're actually in. And once you kind of get to that point where most of us have an irrational mind there at the top, that's like, and then the world's going to come to an end. My kid's going to fail out and they're never going to make it in life. And then you can be like, is that the reaction I want right now? Like, is that accurate? And then you can talk yourself back down. Like, no, that's not accurate. We're all in a stressful time. I'm feeling a lot of stress. I'm reacting out of different stress. And now I want to respond with the appropriate amount of emotion in this situation. Does that make sense? This happens in marriages all the time. When you are triggered, and did you hear how many internal triggers we're probably all experiencing right now? When you already feel triggered, your emotional responses tend to be more dramatic than the situation that you're actually in. So if you could just apply the 90-second rule to your life, particularly when you feel overwhelmed with sadness, anxiety, or anger, particularly those emotions that feel like they're going to overwhelm us, if you can return to your body, I'm okay, this is okay, I'm safe, let that 90 seconds come and go. go, and then be curious about what it is that you were telling yourself, like what exactly was going on in your mind, so that you can talk yourself into a better space to actually deal with, engage, communicate, relate to your spouse, to your kids, to yourself. This also applies very much just internally to ourselves, how we talk ourselves into a better place. So my challenge for you today is to choose not to react to something that you normally would. So you will all have an opportunity, probably within the next hour, to react to something in your life, to a thought you have, to a trigger that you're experiencing, to a relationship that's in your home right now with you. Rather than reacting the way you normally would, just take the 90 seconds to listen to what's happening internally for you. And then be curious about whether that's the person that you are trying to grow into. You can also help your children do this. You can help them walk through, hey, when you guys were just fighting, what is it that you were telling yourself? Now, I know these things are awkward when you've never done this before with your family, but it's worth it. This is an awkward time. You might as well try something new. What's the worst that's going to happen? No one can go anywhere. We're all here. So we can just keep trying. So I want to encourage you to try to apply the 90-second rule the next time that you feel triggered and see without condemnation what your heart is telling you about what you're really worried about. Because once you get in touch with that, you can separate that moment that you're in from that moment that you are about in your mind, if that makes sense, and grow through that. All right, you guys, thanks for coming. I will see you, and leave your healthcare professional's name for us in the comments, and we will be praying for them today and every day on this touch point. See you tomorrow.